Hello, welcome back. In the last video, I did a short biography on Mahalia Jackson, and now I'm going to do a short history on the period that she was most dominant in the golden age of gospel. In the 1940s and 50s, the United States was filled with problems, recovering from the Great Depression and fighting several wars in Europe and Asia. The servicemen in these wars were disproportionately black and poor, as in just about every war in the history of the U.S. More than 1.2 million black men served in World War II alone. Expecting to return as heroes, many of them were left facing segregation, mob violence, and many suffering from mental illness brought on by the war. To make matters even worse, many were denied the perks that were offered to their white counterparts from the GI Bill. Musically speaking, the black man and woman had two ways to cope with enduring the hostility of white America. Secular genres, the blues and jazz, allowed people of this particular plight to pour out their souls, to tell stories of despair, poverty, adultery, and any other unfortunate circumstances to distinct melodies, and in the case of jazz, long, larger instrumental sections to appeal to an array of emotions. On the other side was a budding Christian music that told classic stories of keeping the faith, hoping for a better tomorrow, and treating people how you wanted to be treated, centered around the Savior, Jesus Christ. This budding Christian music was gospel, and this period is known in gospel today as the Golden Age. The increasing commercialism in music created a platform for many black artists. In addition, around this period, there was a growing feeling that our problems weren't just inherited. Each and every problem could be solved with organization and referendums on oppressive governments and those who benefited from them. These principles were entrenched in the civil rights movement, which in many ways stretches back to when the first black servants were brought to the U.S. in 1619, but were finally impacting legislation on the local, state, and national level. And no artists were as visible nor as vocal during this period of the civil rights movement than gospel artists. Gospel of this era was defined mostly by quartets and quintets, which were able to go long stretches a cappella because of the vocal range of its members, typically bass to tenor or even falsetto or soprano in female groups. This is a technique that would be reused by doo wop groups decades later. Some of the biggest artists to come out of this period, which I will do a video on each because it's not enough time to cover all of their work in this one video alone, include the Soul Stirrers, the Dixie Hummingbirds, the Pilgrim Travelers, the Five Blind Boys of Mississippi, the Jackson Southerners, the Sensational Nightingales, the Highway QCs, the Swan Silvertone, and the Pilgrim Jubilees, to name a few. After decades of dominance on the airways, in addition to sales of phonographs and later records, and ticket sales that were enjoyed by the blues and jazz, gospel was now taking the crown as America's most marketable sound, both because of the new sound inspired by the blues and the fact that the lyrics and topics weren't controversial. These factors, coupled with the fact that America's Christian audience was one of, if not the largest in the world, and growing as people were getting a little tired of juke joints and the honky tonks they had grown accustomed to visiting during the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. To put to put it in perspective, the dominance of gospel at the time, James Brown, Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin, Little Richard, Ray Charles, Marvin Gaye, the Isley Brothers, Jackie Wilson, and countless others that are considered extremely instrumental in the development of several subsequent art forms such as soul, R&B, funk, rock and roll, disco, and hip hop. All started as gospel artists, the dominant genre at the time, and what was seen essentially as a rite of passage. All of the gospel artists at the time toured extensively on the Chitlin circuit, oftentimes extremely underpaid and traveling in station wagons. It seems like the many obstacles, it seems like the more obstacles faced by these artists, the better they perform. But it is extremely unfortunate that the people that paved the way for modern artists and athletes and other forms of entertainers to make millions were persistently underpaid and underappreciated, to say the least. On the next video, I will focus on the contemporary area of gospel and how gospel to this day is able to constantly reinvent its sound. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.